Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is James Duggan. Welcome to IGN Plays Live. I am here with David McDonough and Will Miller, the co-lead designers of Civilization Beyond Earth Rising Tide, the new expansion that is going to grace the game in a couple of months. Is that correct?
That's right, October 9th.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, you have a date. Very exciting. All right, so what are the big elevator pitch headline bullet points for the expansion?
Well, James, I think typically Civilization expansions have covered one distinct part of the game, the early game, the mid-game, the late game. But looking at what our counterparts on the XCOM team did with Enemy Within, which really changed the entire XCOM experience, we wanted to bring an entirely new experience to Beyond Earth with Rising Tide. So this game adds a ton of gameplay across the entire spectrum of the game, starting with the ability to land on and colonize the oceans. So aquatic gameplay is huge. A new diplomacy system, brand new to Civ, way to interact with leaders like you've never been able to before. Hybrid units, a new artifact system, expanded quests, 2 new biomes, new aliens. The expansion has got a ton of new content.
Changes, revisions, and additions to the entirety of the early, mid, and late game. So this is a very interactive experience, IGN Plays Live. You can tweet at us at IGN with a hashtag IGN Plays Live with your questions for David and Will, and we will answer them. We're going to jump into a little bit of gameplay here, and we are here for about 2 hours, so any and everything will be talked about. So, obviously with Rising Tide, a name like Rising Tide, there's a huge focus on being able to colonize the ocean with a city, which is a first for Civilization, correct?
Well, I suppose if you count Alpha Centauri, which often is viewed as a sort of an inspiration for Civilization in space, that game also had settling on the water. But what we've done in Rising Tide is a number of new things that are wholly new to Civilization games. The most notable being that not just do your cities go on the water, but they move. They travel around the seas like giant boats that people live on, more or less, giant arcs. And that changes everything about how they play, how they gain territory, how they develop, how armies fight against them. It's perhaps one of the most fun, most changeable parts of the expansion, and yet for such a simple mechanical move. Like the fact that cities can travel changes so much.
That does change a lot because it affects the tiles around the city. And how does that whole thing work with being able to influence tiles with a moving city on the water?
Right. Well, if you recall from earlier Civilization games and Beyond Earth base game, the way that your culture border grows is you get culture, and that expands your territory, and that's how you get more resources in your territory and are able to sort of master your environment with your city. On water, though, your city doesn't naturally grow that way. In fact, it doesn't grow at all unless you move the city. So you basically paint your territory border by driving your city around. And this is really an interesting and cool solution to this problem that we gave ourselves, which was to make city development on the water mechanically distinct from how it works on land, but also seamless. So we didn't want to change the rules too much where you'd have to learn an entirely new set of mechanics on the ocean. But this small change made a big impact.
Straight away, he's calling in or that was another player.
Another colony.
Can you call in a city straight to the water was one of my questions.
So we're playing as Integer, which is one of our new leaders. They're a diplomatic sort of power broker focused civilization, but one of the other leaders we revealed, Duncan Hughes of the North Sea Alliance. The North Sea Alliance faction is an aquatics-themed colony, and so they will actually planetfall at sea if there's water on the planet.
Also, the one sponsor we've yet to reveal lands on the water as well.
Oh,
so
fantastic.
Two of the new sponsors have water starts, but
a little sneak preview.
At anytime you build a colonist in the game, you can drive that colonist on the water and settle there.
And for those wondering at home, factions and sponsors are the same thing.
Yeah, we kind of use those terms interchangeably. Faction, sponsor, leader. The idea is that the sort of name of the leader of the sponsor, Integer, for example, or Ark, or Brasilia. These are the factions from Old Earth that sponsored the expedition, which is why we call them sponsors.
Fantastic. So I saw there is one of the new alien units that is in the water. It's interesting. I saw it a little bit at E3. It's interesting in the sense that it's not necessarily aggressive actively. It's just kind of a life form that serves as a literal and figurative roadblock. So can you tell us a little bit?
The Hydra Coral is what you're seeing here, and they are sort of roadblocks. That's a good way to put it. There are no mountains on the ocean, right? But we needed some sort of way to impede your traversal and to slow you down just a little bit. And that's what the hydrocoral's main function is. But you can use it strategically. There are ways that you can encourage its growth, for example, in someone else's territory.
Really?
There's also ways that you can discourage its growth, and other advantages, other ways to take advantage of it later. But you can kill it, and it will cause a little bit of damage if you attack it with a melee unit. Ranged unit, no problem, but they can soak quite a lot of damage, so it takes a little while to get rid of them.
Great. Hey, David, talk us through your strategy. What are your thoughts?
My strategy on turn 11 is pretty simple. I only have an explorer, so I'm just out looking around. We're playing on a Terran map, which is sort of the standard, the default. There's big continents and big oceans, and I know that there's 6 other players in the game. You can see some of their city sites where they've made planetfall. But right now I'm trying to find, I'm on the hunt for resource pods, expedition sites, and artifacts. Artifacts is a big new feature in the game. I'll open up the panel here before we have any, though. You get these artifacts that come in these 3 categories: Old Earth, Alien, and Progenitor, and they're basically unique objects, like extremely strange or powerful or mysterious things that you can dig up or find in wreckage of old things. Mm-hmm. And you can research them, break them down for immediate gain, or you can combine them together and they can produce permanent advantages, like buildings or even wonders. And that could be a huge boost, especially in the early game if you get a good set. So I know that there are artifacts to be found before the other colonists arrive and start competing with me for them. I'm taking my explorer out as far as he can go and seeing if I can scare up a few.
And as I understand it, the artifacts were kind of an evolution of the quest system and trying to tell players a story in an emergent way. Was that what was kind of behind the...
That's right. There's been this, this desire on our part and on our fans' part for us to take Beyond Earth in a much more science fiction direction. It's always been important that this is kind of an experience grounded in reality, but we wanted some ways to push the sci-fi, I think, and the quest system certainly does that well, but also the artifacts are a great way for us to deliver some world building in the game without trampling on the player's ability to tell their own story. So each one of those artifacts, and hopefully we'll find one here in a second, has a lot of fiction that you can read and a background, and they're awesome. Like the range of things you can get from old ancient alien machines to old coffee makers from Earth, and violins and things that and we had a lot of fun making them, and they add a lot of richness to the game, and as well as a cool a new mechanic. So
great, and that's something that players wanted. Speaking of player feedback, can you talk a little bit about what the biggest points of feedback you received from the base Beyond Earth game? What players, what did they want for the future of the game in terms of content, and how much of that do you feel you've delivered with Rising Tide?
Well, I think the promise of Beyond Earth is vast. This idea that we're telling the story of mankind's future, if Historic Civ tells the story of its past. And that's a tall order, and I think the base game was a really great step in that direction. It broke a lot of new ground, and it let us see what players really wanted out of the franchise. And we were very encouraged by the feedback we got, which was basically go further, do more, make it more out there, more radical, take more risks with the gameplay, with the story, all of those things. So this is definitely a step in that direction.
One risk that you guys have already disclosed you've taken for the expansion that I'd like to point out, I guess before I say that, one of the points of feedback I heard a lot, at least within the office, was I know during the base game development there was a push to make the aliens more than just barbarians, more than just speed bumps, make them something new. Mm-hmm. But it didn't necessarily come off that way to some of the players that played the game. But now, as I understand it, the Harmony affinity can take control of them and actually use them against the enemy, a lot like we saw with the Hydrocoral.
Yeah, we'll actually try to build for that and see if we can get it running. But that was a really interesting perspective, because the aliens were greatly expanded from, I guess, their origin as the barbarians in previous Civ. But they were never meant to be equivalent to a human faction in the sense of like they don't compete to win the game, but they were meant to be equivalent in terms of their agenda and their sophistication. And this was actually kind of along the lines of what the other feedback we received, where those things were happening, but they just weren't visible to the player. Like the player couldn't appreciate what was going on. The aliens kind of moved in mysterious ways, and they could never really get a hang of it. So a lot of what we've done, in addition to adding a lot of alien species to go along with the water, is we've made the tools by which you manipulate them and interact with them a lot more upfront. So players can sort of see what they're up to much more visibly, but they can also like take overt steps in a very intentional way to decide how they're going to play with the aliens or against them. So one of the examples is the leash ability, which you described, which is a Harmony-specific ability that you can give to your explorers where they can mind control the aliens. So you can make the aliens literally your army, which in a way you could very, very passively in base game. Now it's much more overt. And then there's numerous small changes, but there's other interesting ones like the fact that you no longer automatically destroy alien nests when you stand on them. We actually went back and changed an old rule because it was producing a lot of frustration, a lot of confusion. It didn't fit the way players were trying to actively use the aliens. So now you have to do it on purpose, which means you can absorb them into your territory a lot more easily. You can really decide what nests you care about and which ones you're willing to destroy. The aliens can pay attention to that, much more clearly, and so you can determine sort of turn by turn how you're going to manage your relationship with them. And so a lot of the sophistication that's there already really comes to life when you give the player the tools to play with it.
What do you think, Dad? What do you want to build?
We need science. If we want to get that leash ability, we gotta go for the research.
Yeah, that sounds, when I heard about the leash ability, that sounded that kind of tied together something that I thought was like an obvious step for the game, and it made me very excited.
Yep.
But there are also 2 other affinities, plus the inclusion of hybrid affinities, which is not necessarily a bullet point that you guys are like driving home super hard, but I think it's pretty awesome because you have all these new visuals, depending upon if you go into certain affinities, 50-50 or 60-40 or what have you.
Right.
So can you tell me just what hybrid affinities were and why you chose to include them in the expansion?
Sure. If you recall, the base game affinities were actually real quick. We just got an artifact, so we'll take a minute to show this. This is pretty neat.
This is an alien one.
Yeah.
It's a lot of energy, so save that.
Okay. So you make this decision when you get an artifact. Do I cash it in for a short-term gain, or do I save it and make a set for a long-term gain? And David's going to save it.
Yeah. Right now I'm going for, like I said, go for science. So if it doesn't break down to science right away, then I'm going to hold it in case I can make a set of 3 that can give me like a unique building or wonder.
Mm.
So anyway, the affinities. The affinity system was this cool thing we put in the base game that kind of told it was the mechanical manifestation of how the player adapts to the new world, right? And there were 3 basic ways that we said that could happen. But what it really boiled down to kind of resembled an RPG class system, right? You're investing these experience points in different trees, and it came with the same problems that a class system can, which is to say, if I invest very broadly, sometimes I can make a character build that's not effective. And we put a lot of emphasis in the original game to kind of funnel players out of that possibility. So we helped them not make builds that were so broad that they weren't effective. But players want to roleplay. They want to pick the things that they want to pick. They want to traverse the tech tree in a way that they see fit. So we wanted to build in the hybrid affinities to fill those gaps so that you can have a multi-class civ and still be really effective. And it's also important to note that they're not just averages of the styles and the ideas of the base 3. They're brand new. And when we get a little bit farther into the game, we'll see them.
All these skeletons. I'm going to get so many artifacts from that.
What was the
There we go.
tech tree or tech web is something that I think is a very interesting choice because it is kind of similar to I don't know if any of you have played Path of Exile, but
Sure.
there is I guess, class tree in that is completely opaque and very difficult to discern when you start, but once you understand it, you wouldn't really want it any other way. So what was some of the feedback you guys got from the new tech web, and how did it stack up to previous civilizations? Were players, overall, do you think they were happy with it once they understood it, but it was a little bit difficult to get into? What do you think?
No, it succeeded, and both sort of also raised the same questions again. I think we were very pleased with how the tech web turned out. There's a lot of rich content there. I'll open it up. It really expresses well the sort of sci-fi character of the game, and maps very well to the sort of frontier of discovery. Anywhere you want to go, you could find power. So I think it suited the game very well. But it's a lot of information at once, like you said. And we toyed with lots of different ideas about how to like sort of ease the players into it. You know, whether to prefer sort of hiding parts of the web in order to give new players a guided experience versus revealing it all for the power player who already knows where they want to go. And we came down on the side of revealing it all. One, because we think it tells a beautiful story. Like there's a lot of really interesting ideas and themes that are very attractive. Like they make players eager to get to the fringes. And also because we know that like how people play games, and if we hide parts of the web, somebody's just going to open up the Wikipedia and see the whole thing. So what we've tried to do is find ways to make the information digestible. So that's like the filters that came in the base game, and there's a lot more now.
The searches.
And then this new scheme that you see here of the sort of shape and color language to help guide you as to the types of unlocks you can find on each technology.
So that's a new addition, right?
That's a new addition. And then also the Affinity XP wheel. You can see the ring around every tech icon has a third of it highlighted for whether it gives you XP for that affinities. And since there's a lot more XP for the affinities in the web now with hybrid affinities, it's all over the place. It's much easier to keep that information there without overloading the web with icons that are confusing.
And that scheme actually was inspired by a mod that we saw. Our modding community is always adding great new things to the game, and we watch that and learn from that. And it's a wonderful way for our players to communicate with us very explicitly what they want by making it
by
themselves.
making it themselves.
Yeah, very quickly. Like the I forget what the mod was called. The Tech Web Color mod was the #1 mod on Steam. So said, okay, we'll put color.
Well, I commend you guys for looking at what your community wants in the real by looking at mods and things like that. And I also commend the decision to not hide things from players. I feel as though too often recently games try and, I don't want to say a cliche and handhold, but with the tech web, I'd rather take 30 minutes of my time, learn about it, and then see something I really like and be incentivized to go learn the whole thing and master it, as opposed to just kind of mindlessly being introduced to it. So
a lot of our players like that. They like to learn the new content space. Strategy game players really like to dig in and learn all of the new things, which is great. Unfortunately, because of the nonlinear nature of the tech web, it can be intimidating to players who don't like to do that, or who like a little bit more hand-holding or guidance, and that's why we have the advisors and things like that.
So, I ran across Brasilia's city, so we were meeting him and seeing the new diplomacy setup. It's introducing himself.
And this is one of the headlining features,
Yeah.
a new diplomacy system.
Yes, that's right. So Diplomacy 2.0, which we call it, has a couple of big goals. The first and probably most important is that we wanted to give our characters this stage to express themselves. And we've been seeing these little communications at the top of the screen as we've played, which are kind of their text messages to you almost. And then you have this way to interact with them too, which gives them an opportunity to express themselves. And we've really deepened the catalog of what they'll say to you. And what they say will change over the course of the game depending on how much they like you or who you are, what you're doing. The other thing we wanted to do was allow players to exchange power in a way that they weren't able to before. So you can make these agreements with civs that are very high-level civ-scoped changes or buffs to your game, and they can be extraordinarily powerful. And which agreements that they have to offer you is dependent on their personality traits. The player's personality will evolve over the course of the game, and we'll see this a little bit later as we begin to accumulate the new yield associated with diplomacy called diplomatic capital.
Great. And something that's also, I mean, it's not necessarily new to Rising Tide, but new to Beyond Earth, it wasn't in previous Civ games, was the exchanging of favors. Something in the long term for something in the short term. So for those Civ players or fans who haven't really taken the plunge into Beyond Earth yet, is Rising Tide a good place to start for them?
I think Rising Tide is the definitive way to play this game. I wouldn't say that you have to have the Rising Tide expansion to enjoy the whole Beyond Earth experience, but it's definitely our sort of vision for the whole product. That said, the game is going to have a free patch to the base game, which incorporates a lot of the polished features that we've put in. A lot of the UI has gotten polished. The tech web that we saw, the filtering and the new color scheme will go back into the base game. Some of the other refinements and balance changes that we did. So even if you don't purchase this, you'll get that for free. And that's great. But this is definitely a much more rich experience. It would be like saying, like, do you play Civ 5 or do you play Civ 5 with 2 expansions?
Right.
You always want the expansion. So
Day
this
and
is
night.
the same thing, right?
And especially with the, aquatic units, and that I think is a fundamental change to how the game plays.
Yes.
Certainly with the floating bases. This is Duncan, the Scotsman.
Yeah, right, from North Sea Alliance. So this is the aquatic starting Civ. So they're down to the south of me. And now our...
He's rocking the dad bod real hard.
He really is.
I think the art direction we gave for him was like, imagine he was a prize fighter and now he's 50.
He's even got the
Nose
belt.
has been broken a couple times.
Yeah, he looks like a rough dude.
His belt kind of looks like
Yeah.
the Japanese Famicom, like the Super Famicom. He's got the slot there and everything. Yeah.
Interesting inspiration.
David is Scottish.
Well,
So-
by heritage.
By heritage.
Okay.
So when it came time to pick a new leader, he insisted that we have this guy.
Great. He's very charismatic. Good choice.
Yeah.
Solid choice.
So let me see what we've got. I'm acquiring enough political capital here that I might be in a potential, not active. Might be in a position to make some agreements.
So we've had some questions from Twitter. One of them we actually already answered, and it was any details on Affinity hybrid units. It sounds like we'll get into that a little bit later.
We might. It's kind of a mid to late game thing, and I think this build is locked to 150 turns or something. So we may see some. We'll
Okay.
try. We'll try to multi-class to the point where we can get there.
Yeah,
I
I
mean, there's a
should-
lot we have to
should
see
make
because we
sure.
want to
Yeah.
try and leash aliens. We want
Right.
to try and.
Well, I'll
there's,
just find
there's,
a-
there's a lot of content.
Yeah, we'll see if we can
expansion.
hybridize with Harmony in some interesting
Right.
way.
For all of you watching at home, please tweet your questions at IGN with the hashtag IGN Plays Live, and we will respond to them post haste.
When coyote.
So, talk me through some of the new aquatic life forms, and especially tell me about the Kraken. Is that what it's called?
The Kraken's
Or is that
actually
just-
he was from the base game, but yeah. So the seas, as you can see, because I've been spending a lot of time exploring its seas, are a whole living biome. Like they're fully populated with things, both artifacts and resources and creatures moving around. Like there's plenty of aliens out there. So the aliens at sea are on par with what they were on land, and then some. So there's these rippers here, which are sort of a pod-based, sort of giant eel fishy thing. They're not that strong, but they're very, very fast and can be really dangerous to your weaker units. There's the old sea dragon, which you remember from the base game. I haven't seen a Kraken yet. You'll see them; they're impossible to miss. But then there's also there's a hydrocoral, which you've seen, which are pseudo-alive and really interesting. And then there's the Makara, which is a new colossal alien. So that brings our colossal count to 3. And the Makara is amphibious. So unlike the worm or the Kraken, who you can always escape onto the opposite type of terrain, the Makara will follow you if you
Terrifying.
If you get it right. So one of the most fun things to do is especially if you're playing Harmony and going for leashing, is to follow the leash chain to its second iteration, where you can leash colossal units. So you can get those Makara or those Kraken or those worms and drive them around, and that can be supremely devastating, especially against an aquatic civ, because they tend to be a little weaker. So we've met Arshia.
شعب أرض الفلاح يحييكم باسم
So
السلام.
this is another one of our new leaders. Arshia is the leader of Alpha Law. They have a really, really interesting backstory, and as a result, they're
شعب
I'll
أرض
bring up their traits. Their
السلام
potential agreements are really they can be really wild. They're really fun. They're focused on a lot of resilience-based ideas. Like they get a lot of something for nothing or resources even in really strapped circumstances. So they could be really, really powerful allies or very dangerous enemies because of their ability to just make power from nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, they're really cool. I mean, they just look good.
They do. Got a nice aesthetic.
Mm.
So, faction-specific units are not something that is part of Beyond Earth. There is, the Affinity kind of gives your units a unique look, which is something I think that is kind of new to the game. But, so what were the ideals behind that decision? Did you feel as though factions were just kind of a starting point and a variable and not necessarily as important as they were in previous games, and it's really more about your affinity? Or I guess what were some of the thoughts behind that process?
Well, telling the story of humanity's future, our guiding principle there was it's an unknown future. You don't know what's going to happen. I think the specialized units per leader in historic Civ is great because it lets you sort of tip your hat to things that actually happened in history, right?
Right.
But we don't have to align this game to anything that has happened. It's an unknown future. And we want that future to be built by the player's actions, not by the designers so much. So your decisions in the tech tree, your decisions on the map, these are the things that shape your Civ and determine its unique qualities. But at the same time, the leaders do have personalities. They do have certain spins. Each leader has a personality trait that can't be changed. It's always the same. So you can kind of go into an engagement with another Civ sort of knowing what they're going to do right off the bat. And as their traits change, you can watch that and cater your strategy accordingly. But it's definitely that sort of unknown future that guided that decision.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked about the artificial intelligence that inhabits the sea, but we haven't talked too much about some of the new aquatic units. that we'll be seeing in the game. And it's an interesting time for me to bring this up, and we'll probably touch on it again because we haven't built any yet. But besides like an Explorer, which
Sorry, yeah, I'm playing strategically.
oh no,
not to
please,
show off.
please do. This is that is not me passive aggressively saying get to the chase. But I just wanted to touch on submarines because that's something that has not appeared in a very long time, and that's something that is new to Rising Tide. So for
New slash old. They were in Civ 5.
right. So for those of us who've forgotten, what are the main differences between submarines and conventional boats in Civilization?
Well, submarines are invisible by default. So, like the concept of invisibility and stealth was partially explored in past civs. It was usually reserved for submarines, and it just meant that the unit couldn't be seen on the map and targeted by enemies until they had spotted it, which was usually you get close enough to it, or you have a specific unit. Like the submarines had the counter, which was the cruiser in historic civ. So we took it out for base BE because it didn't fit the sort of generic canon of core naval units we were going for. But with aquatic gameplay, we really wanted to bring submarines back, and so we brought invisibility back, but we brought it back in a big way. So the rules have been simplified and changed a little bit, so they're a little bit easier to use. Submarines are some of the best naval units you can get, invisibility aside, but they're not the only ones. So invisibility has also been extended to some land units. There are a couple of the new hybrid unique units that get it as well, and it creates for really interesting tactical situations. A lot of the new hybrid uniques have been designed around the idea of giving the player tactical powers or capabilities that have never previously existed in civ games. There's a whole slew of new mechanics that they embody, and one of them is a sort of a revamped version of invisibility. So, at least for submarines, subs are your ambushers, your raiders, your flankers, or the guys that will protect the surface fleet from hostile enemy fleets. They're also really, really good for laying traps for cities, because aquatic cities move. They can get themselves into isolated situations where a fleet of subs can lie outside their visibility, and then you can, can sucker the other player into a foolish declaration of war, and then pounce with all of your submarine fleet. Likewise, you can sort of ambush their surface fleet if they're coming for your cities. So when I play naval war, I usually have about a 1-to-1 ratio of submarines to all of their types, because I really enjoy the submarine tactics.
Instruct the children not to dream of.
We have a couple of Twitter questions pouring in. I will read them in the order received. A question from Lofty Kerbazi, and they ask, will the devs consider getting earlier and more hybrid units? So basically just asking if it is a possibility in the future of Civilization Beyond Earth to have access to hybrid units before the mid and late game.
Sure. I mean, anything is possible, right? Like we said earlier, the hybrid units come into play more as a mid to late game feature, and really that's because the beginning of the game needs to stay. This is sort of our call as creatives here. It needs to stay in the realm of possibility, I guess. Like you're still, we want the things that you build and the things that you're doing to be things that we might be able to do in the next 100 years or so to keep this game, at least at the beginning, in the realm of a believable thing. And then let it go off the rails sci-fi wise later on. So whereas that was sort of a linear ramp in the base game, it's an exponential ramp in this game. There's way more cool sci-fi stuff in the middle and late game, and a lot more on the map in the early game. So you'll see the map sort of saturated with goodies, these weird alien goodies everywhere. And again, this is another.
There's a crack.
Oh, there he is.
Aha.
Yeah. So to answer your question. Yes, of course, it's possible that we could integrate these things, more of them earlier, but in the expansion here, they're definitely mid to late game.
Excellent. Moving on, Darren McCammon, who had an earlier question that we got to, which was also about hybrid units, asks if there has been any AI changes in terms of the enemy civs.
Yes, of course. The AI, particularly as it relates to diplomacy, has been completely overhauled, and it's a really interesting because in addition to all of this sort of progression gameplay that we've added, we've also added a lot of transparency to the way the AI operates. So you can go into the AI's, or you can go into the diplomacy screen and see what the AI's traits are. For example, if they have traits dealing with trade, you know that they will like you more if you trade with them, or if you stop trading with them, they won't like you as much. So you can kind of predict what they're going to do and strategize around that a little bit better. And also, of course, we've updated the AI to to handle water better, and refined the AI that was in the base game to be much more competitive on the victory conditions, and just across the board stronger and better. I wish, like, we found a lot of things, even from Civ 5, that we fixed in this.
So huge overhauls and improvements to the ads.
Yeah, and just little things that kind of bothered people, like the way that your workers are automated in your cities. Like, we went in and made that better, because if you let them go, they would go crazy on terrascapes or whatever, or something like that, right? We went in and fixed that. So there's a lot of like little things, usability issues that we went in and fixed. But I think overall too, the AI is much stronger.
Excellent. All right, you talked about victory conditions, and I may be understanding victory conditions incorrectly, but they're affinity specific, correct?
3 of them are, yes.
Okay, 3 of them are. With the hybrid affinities, are we going to see the addition of new victory conditions? Maybe.
There are not any new victory conditions. I think you have to kind of stay within that 7 plus or minus 2 range of options, or the game will just get crazy. But we have gone in and sort of tweaked the victory conditions we have to make them more suitable for hybrid builds. So if you're a hybrid build, you can get there just as effectively as a pure build.
Awesome. I love the aesthetic, by the way, especially so with the new biomes, we see things like primordial biomes, which are kind of lava, and I guess one of the big points of feedback as well in the office was it's an alien world, but it's startlingly similar to Earth in some ways. Just the color palette is a little bit differently. But with the aquatic diversity and with the primordial biome and things like that, are there any other biomes that we're going to see that vastly change from the convention?
Those are the only 2. So the primordial and the
frigid.
And the frigid biome, which you're seeing now.
Right.
Yeah, I think that the base game biomes are really evocative and cool, but we trended in a more conservative direction because we were concerned about being able to read the units and all that stuff. And I think we solved those problems in these new biomes, but really encouraged our artists to go in a way more sci-fi direction. So I'm really happy with the way the aesthetic turned out. And again, like, we went back and polished things. Each of the alien sets for the different biomes, they look different. They have different gameplay behaviors now per biome. So if you'll notice, in the Arctic biome, in the frigid biome, they're all sort of white and black aliens that match the environments. And that was a feature that, nice polishing touch that we put in there. Each biome also has a specific, what we call marvels, and that's what you're seeing here, this giant hydrocoral brain 3-hex giant thing.
Wow.
Actually, there are 2 marvels in this. This is the aquatic marvel, and then there's another marvel we'll find on land. But this has
somebody must have found it.
Right. This has a quest associated with it. If we find all of the smaller versions of this, the hydrocoral brains, we'll get some reward. So it's kind of a race to see who can do that fastest.
Yeah,
there's the other one right there, the progenitor machine thing over there.
That thing.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that's another way that we've made the I guess the planets feel more alien. Not only are there more creatures everywhere, and there's the water you can see through, and all of the sort of diversity that it has, but yeah, we said we took the sort of sci-fi context by the horns, shall we say, and tried to find ways to make this game, live up to that potential. And the marvels are the idea of these epic structures, these grand objects or enormous living creatures that are just impossible on this planet, was one we couldn't pass up.
That's one of the great things about Beyond Earth, is that we can do things like make a building that's 3 hexes, and that fits in the universe, that you just can't do that in a historical game. So we get to bend the rules a little bit. We get to, make these incredible, neat-looking things on the map.
Must have been kind of refreshing after doing so many historic games.
Oh man, our team just had a really wonderful time.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's also worth pointing out, I guess, while we're on the topic of art. Ooh, let's talk about artifacts though, because you just found another one.
Yeah. So the this one I've got one each of the old Earth and one of the alien. So you can also see that it has this like sort of quality marker, which just governs how much power it has. So it's a pristine artifact. It can provide me a lot of science, which I'm tempted to get, but I have 2 down, and I want to get 3 so I can get that set. And the sets are sort of assembled in a manner not unlike a set from, say, Risk, where 3 of the same category or 1 of each will provide some sort of special reward. And the more pristine the artifacts, the more powerful.
Okay.
So I can get a building or a wonder that only I could build. It could only be unlocked from the artifact system by using that. And since I'm 1 away and I've got all of these explorers all over the place, I'm going to hold on to them and press
So the whole
unlock.
reward is greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah,
this case.
definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll see if I can get a third one eventually.
So we're on a, I believe this is a Terran landscape, correct? So there's also Protean and Atlantean, and Protean is one giant kind of Pangea-esque landmass, and then Atlantean is a bunch of little like island hopping.
The archipelago.
Deals. Yes.
Yeah.
So how does that affect the gameplay now that there is kind of an emphasis on naval combat and naval exploration? So, for instance, if I wanted to play an exclusively seafaring civilization on, say, a Protean planet, how would that work? Would it just be a lot of ocean for me to deal with, or?
Yeah, I mean, how you play. That's one of the great things about water gameplay is that the land distribution really influences how you're going to play. So if you're on that Protean, Pangea map, that game will play much differently than your archipelago map, your Atlantean map. So really tailoring your strategy to the planet you land on has always been a goal of ours. We want you to play to capitalize on things that you find on the planet. Really, each planet being a puzzle that you have to solve, and this goes in one more. This takes one more step in that direction.
Nice. All right, we have a couple more questions here. Darren McCammon is really taking advantage of the developers.
It's all right, Darren. Bring it on.
Have there been many research trees added to accommodate the new gameplay mechanics?
Research trees. I think you mean
Maybe
technologies. Actually, no. The technologies, the set is the same, but a lot of the unlocks and positioning and certainly the costs have all been rebalanced, and that's mostly based on the hybrid affinities. So there's like new hybrid units that are in here, and there's also aquatic gameplay buildings. So with the addition of the new content, some other things got shuffled around where they come online. There's also been a very extensive rebalancing pass on where the affinity XP comes from. That's part of what I was mentioning earlier with the new sort of affinity wheel thing, this sort of little three segment circle that tells you what kind of affinity this is associated with, because there's a lot more of it. So one of the most interesting things about the game is that whereas previously you would go through the technologies for the immediate gain, in most cases, like I want to get this unit or I want to get this building, you would do that for a while, and then you would start going for technology specifically for the affinity it would give you. But now, much of the time, the two are much more closely aligned now, where the things that you want to get will bring you the affinity along the way, and that's not a bad thing. You don't have to really go out of your way to focus on affinity in the technology web the same way. You'll get it naturally. So that hybridization becomes a much more organic process. It's really a reflection of you playing your game, playing the game you want to play, going for what you want to go for, and then you just get it.
Talk to me about virtues. Have there been any changes or overhauls to those, or are those basically the same as they were in the previous game, or the base game rather?
The base game.
Yep.
This had a similar sort of adjustment to the balance based on the virtue's cost and the specific powers of some of the virtue synergy bonuses, those sort of per set, per column things. But mostly they've been maintained in order to preserve the original game's balance.
Nice.
So
all right, what is give me an update. Give me a status update on what is happening on this planet.
Well, it's been a lot of exploration, which isn't all that interesting to watch, but I'm about to switch gears a bit because I want to build a new city. And I want to do it at sea because there's all this stuff out here. But there's a nest right there.
So that's going to have to get cleared out.
So I've been sort of like hedging until I can get... I just got an ultrasonic fence in this city, which will keep the aliens away. And I've been like trying to develop with my workers enough so that I can suck the worker back into the city if there's angry aliens nearby.
Like that giant worm right there.
Like a giant worm. So this is an example of me sort of like making a deliberate move on the aliens. I'm like not necessarily going to be anti-alien this whole game, but this is an immediate roadblock to an immediate obstacle. And I'm ready to take it out. I'm probably going to lose this patrol boat because of all the aliens ready to jump on whoever messes with it. But as soon as this worker here is finished with his build in 2 turns, I'm going to pop this nest and like wait out the storm as the aliens are mad, and then they'll get over it.
And then they'll be fine.
Yeah.
And then at that point you'll expand.
Yeah, I'll be ready with a colonist.
Excellent. Into the ocean.
Right.
So David's done. David is the alien AI guy. David wrote the alien AI and has done quite a bit of work in the expansion to make the aliens more dynamic. So when you in these live streams, pay attention to how he plays regarding the aliens because you want to get some pro tips. That's
from the man who made
them.
them.
The man who made it. Yeah.
So I think we've met.
I
I think we've just got one more to get. So I've got a fair bit of capital. I need some more, but it might be time to get an agreement soon.
And these are these large overarching agreements that are going to affect the way.
Right.
Okay.
So, like, especially since I'm about to get into some fighting with the aliens, I could stand a pretty good military one.
So the diplomacy system is built on this new resource called diplomatic capital. We've been accruing it over the course of the game. There are a couple ways to get it. You can build wonders to get it. A spy agency will get it for you. Covert ops can get it. But the main way that you get it is to have other civs make agreements with you. And when you make agreements with them, it costs a per turn amount and a flat cost as well. And we're playing Lena, the integer leader. And her special ability is that all agreements cost less. So she's really great at the diplomatic game, and we're going to take advantage of that.
And I also understand there's 2 new mechanics, fear and respect, that kind of come into the game in the mid and late game, and can also coerce people that otherwise wouldn't necessarily do deals with you to do just that.
That's right. We were talking about how the AI is more transparent, and this is a kind of an evolution of that, of the favors system that we put in into the base game. It's actually an idea by one of the designers on the base game, Anton Strenger, to sort of make fear and respect the driving factors. It's very Machiavellian. It's like, if you respect me, you'll do what I want, or if you fear me, you'll do what I want. David, if you bring up the after this war goes
Epic
down,
battle.
Whoa.
It's one of my opponents fighting the aliens, which makes this a really good time.
Do it.
Pillage.
You'll notice clearing alien nests is now an action that you have to do when you drive over them.
Right,
It doesn't
as opposed to
automatically
just
happen. Right.
it happening. Okay.
But anyway, fear and respect. So you fear is kind of a very simple calculation of how big my army is versus yours. So that can change depending on how many units you have, what your standing army is like, and it also factors in some other things like covert activity and things that would directly affect your military effectiveness. Respect, though, is directly related to things that the leaders like and dislike that you do. So you're seeing we're getting these little pop-ups all the time. So Suzanne Fielding likes our production rate, for example. So that means that her respect for us has gone up just a little bit. And you can look at a leader's traits and figure out what things they will like and what things they won't like, and use that information to behave in a certain way to make them like you.
What variables are factored into that? Is that like affinity? So, for instance, if there's a hybrid or an affinity that, oh God, the alien-loving affinity?
Harmony.
Harmony.
Yes. Excuse me for the affinity slur there, but
it's okay.
So if you are killing a lot of aliens, will the harmony affinity be less likely to respect you?
Absolutely, and they'll be sort of, even, that's a great example. But if your affinity diverges, no matter what it is, if it diverges so much that you've become 2 diametrically opposed civilizations, they'll call you out on that. And that's a big respect dip. So one of our strategies here is generally to make friends with a handful of, a simple majority of the people on the map, because you're not going to be able to make friends with all of them, right, Dave?
Of course.
Right.
And then, capitalize on those relationships as you play. But you'll see that fear and respect factor into how the AI makes decisions that you propose, agreements that you propose. So they will always agree, for example, if their fear is high enough, or if their respect is high enough. So you can use it to coerce and force actions of the AI, which is pretty cool.
Which is very exciting, because it's always, I guess in any 4X or grand strategy game, it's always kind of annoying when you're like, hey, do this thing. We're 20 times larger than you. They're like, no.
Yeah, I won't do that. And oftentimes, and this is endemic of Civ 5 too, is that the sponsors will just backstab you or do something that's totally out of character. And under the hood, there are all these numbers that totally make sense, that justify these crazy actions. But to the player, it's like, why the hell did you just do that?
Right.
So by putting some of those numbers up front and letting the player see the machinations behind the curtain a little bit, they can predict that behavior better and manipulate it. All right, Dave, how's it going with the city?
I took it out, and I guess whoever my neighbor was that was in the fight with the aliens cleaned them out, so I've suffered
Nice
no
guy.
consequences.
Wow.
There's this worm here that blew up my plantation.
Oh, what a jerk.
Oh, it happens. He just doesn't know his own strength.
Now, Dave, the ultrasonic fence.
Oh no, it looks like he's making a move.
Nah, he's just bumming around.
Okay. You're not even concerned. There's
I
a
do
giant
know,
worm diving
I do know
into
what
your
they're
capital.
thinking.
Oh yeah, that's right. It's an extension of you that's
Yeah, right.
destroying yourself. It's like the id.
Right.
A reference that I feel as though none of our viewers will get.
You'd be surprised.
It's ageism. I'm
Hey,
sorry.
Civ fans are
Civ
very
fans
sophisticated.
Tweet at me.
Super smart.
That's
At
why we like
IGN
'em.
with the hashtag IGN plays if you know the reference to id. And also with your questions, Darren McCammon has since tweeted about 20 questions at us, so I will pick one and read it in just a second here. So we've talked a lot about the tech web seeing revisions, the Virtue seeing revisions, and it sounds like there's been a general overhaul to accommodate the new units and variables that have been added to the game. Derek McCammon wants to know if that rings true for past units that have been in the game. Has there been any kind of balance changes in, I guess, observance of the new units being added or changes?
Yeah, plenty. A lot of them sort of got pretty heavily rebalanced in light of the new hybrid affinities. Since affinity drives your military's development really heavily. It governs when your military units get better and how much better. And now that you can get a lot more affinity and there's hybrid upgrades to go for, a lot of the core units, their roles have become a lot broader. They can become a lot more different things, and that's part of what makes it fun. They can become really, really customized, even more so than they did before. So, where they unlock, how much they cost to build, what their inherent combat strength is, what particular upgrades they have all been extensively rebalanced. And there's been some pretty major moves. Like I recently did a fairly comprehensive rebalance on aircraft as a result, and like the whole naval catalog.
Colonists?
Yeah, it's time. The whole naval catalog was redesigned for aquatic gameplay. Like we used to just have the naval fighter, which was sort of a one-size-fits-all boat. Now there's a whole tactical range, like I said, with the submarines and everything. So a lot of the old strategies are still applicable, and you can definitely still play them, but you're going to face armies that are a lot more varied, and you're capable of fielding an army that's a lot more varied if you embrace the hybrid affinities. So the military landscape is just a lot deeper than it used to be.
I'll be asking you this question again as we get towards the end of the live stream, but now that we're almost about halfway through, it sounds like that Rising Tide is a unlike other Civilization expansions, not just in the fact that it focuses on the entirety of the early, mid, and late game, but also that there are just a huge number of changes, as well as additions to the game. So for Civilization fans or anybody who kind of jumped in to be and was like, well, this sounds like a good time for them to get back in, to try it out, to see what's happening, try out all these new hybrid affinities, units, and strategies. Are you going to have any kind of sale that correlates to the release? Because this is not a standalone expansion.
Actually, I think we've had some already, bundling opportunities and things like that, but it's really
I think
not.
we had a free-to-play weekend not long ago.
Yeah, we did a free-to-play week. That was cool. But I don't really know. We just make the game.
But watch out for it.
James. But yeah, I would imagine we would do something like that.
So I can get the bombard.
Lofty Kerbazi wants to know if there are any significant changes to Wonders, if they were buffed at all, specifically.
Well, we did a really comprehensive Wonder redesign with a patch not long ago. I guess it was a long time ago. Not long after the base game launched, where they were made to be a lot more sort of idiosyncratic, where they didn't provide yields. They weren't there to be your big buildings, but they were there to provide sort of unique gameplay powers, things you couldn't really get anywhere else. And so that went over really well. And so we've made a lot of those stronger. We've designed a suite of aquatic-only wonders that only aquatic cities can build, which are much more thematic to the way aquatic cities work and can make them extremely powerful. And then we also made wonders, we tied them into the diplomacy system by having them as one of the primary ways that you can just outright generate diplomatic capital. So a little like, it's a little bit of the page out of the tourism book of Civ Brave New World, is that wonders are extraordinary things that give you cachet, that give you power. If you can demonstrate that you built this incredible thing, you have clout in the world, clearly.
Right.
So if you want to get diplomatic capital and you're playing a game with very few other leaders, or they just aren't buying what you're selling, so to speak, you can still manufacture it by building wonders. And actually, there's some wonders focuses, like the new Pacific Pan-Asian Cooperative unique ability is much more heavily wonder focused than it used to be.
And those have been rebalanced too.
All of the
sponsor,
all of the sponsor unique abilities were mostly discarded and rebuilt in light of the new diplomacy system into a form that fits the character trait idea.
There are also a few wonders that you can unlock only through the artifact system. that we've designed especially for that mechanic. So
Interesting. And we actually just had an update on our little artifact system going on. You found a third artifact, correct?
I did. I opted not to break it in just yet because there was one that by itself would give me 100 energy, which seemed like a pretty good move. So I'm going to try to find another one. Oh, so we've met the last leader,
How
Suzanne.
may the corporation serve you?
So all 6 of us are now present on the planet, and I can deal with them all, which I will see if I can do.
Pull the strings.
We've got all kinds of stuff we can get.
So you can see that
I don't know what I
through
want.
diplomacy is this new avenue to solve problems in Civ. So if you have a problem, if you have a deficit in your civilization, if you're going to war and you need some help, there were a handful of ways you would solve that traditionally in Civ and in Base Beyond Earth. The diplomacy system represents a brand new avenue for solutions to problems, and a very powerful one. So if you're a peaceful player but you need military all of a sudden, or if you've just expanded and you need health very quickly, if you have the diplomatic capital, if you have the international clout, you can solve those problems very effectively using the diplomacy system. So we're sort of looking around here. We're adding a new trait. We have 167 capital saved up. And the agreements that we get to make with other civs depend on how many traits we have. So we need to pick some more traits so that other civs will make agreements with us. So we have 2 now. And
So I was just checking what my status is before I make a decision. So yeah, so we have 2 traits. Our character trait, which everyone starts with, and then we chose this domestic innovative trait, which is just a science focus.
Right.
So we're making our domestic sphere a little bit more science friendly. And actually that's working out really well, so rather than adding a new one, I'm going to make it better.
That's just going to help you with your overall goals more so than
Yeah,
kind of
like
cashing in your clout with somebody else might.
right. One of the great things about the diplomacy system is that it can solve problems both specific and general. It really can be applied to anything that you're facing in the short or long term, and that was really a big focus when we designed it. We wanted the system to be about expressing power and identity, like what your civ's values are and what makes you the best civ in the world at this particular thing. What makes you unique? So the things that you can find in the diplomacy system to do can be general, like I said, like we could just sort of be generally good at science, a little bit better than most people, or I could be really specific, and that's where things like the character trait and the agreements that I offer or accept come in. You know, you can say like my army, I'm going to be deliberately an imperialistic, conquest-focused, sieging and killing army-based civ.
Right.
And I could assemble a bunch of character traits and agreements that add up to that and make me uniquely good at that.
And your diplomatic choices with what we just saw will give you bonuses even if you don't necessarily interact with other civilizations all that much?
Yeah, the traits are meant to focus on you all the time. That's
Okay.
really what you are. But they also come along with their catalog of agreements, and that's what other people buy from you.
Right.
So when,
Okay.
for instance, I go to diplomacy and look at all potential agreements, these are all from the traits that these people have picked. Some of them are their character traits, like Suzanne Arc is a covert ops based civ. So she's got 2 covert ops agreements at all times that I can always go for. So I can always know if I want to be covert ops, it pays to be friends with Arc. They're
Right.
going to make my covert ops better. But depending on what else she's going for, like looks like she's got a couple of commercial ones, like the smart grid one, and then this is an orbital themed one. She might pick these for any number of reasons, because of the circumstances in the game, because of her neighbors, because of what she particularly wants at this time. So every game I got to learn a little bit over again who's going to be about what in this game, because everything is customizable. So if I also want to go orbital focus, that's an extra incentive to be friends with Arc this time around.
Mhm.
Maybe in another game it would be somebody else.
And how does this factor into multiplayer? Because obviously in multiplayer with the AI it's one thing, but with friends playing, generally you want to be allied with each other or not.
sure.
So how do you kind of make the diplomacy system still viable to people who are, regardless of the circumstance, going to be agreed upon allies?
Well, one of the goals with the diplomacy system, with the exception of fear and respect, we wanted the diplomacy system to work in multiplayer exactly the same way that it works in single player. And it does. So you can make these deals with players. There are no there's no fear and respect for human players, obviously, because that's kind of built in.
That's good, because I have a colonist right there.
Just got smoked.
So I was like, oh, I wonder if they're still mad at me. And so I sent the gunboat out. Kraken killed it.
Turns out they are.
Turns out they are. So I will wait to send
One of your
the
children has
colonists
risen
out.
up against you, Father.
Well, they
But
know
you can-
not what they do.
in multiplayer, you can still make these really powerful deals. But again, like, if I don't want to make that deal with you, I don't.
Right.
It's a choice.
Right.
With the AIs will agree to agreements with you provided they don't hate you a lot. Right. So you can basically count on them agreeing with you, but a human player can refuse. So it does change the dynamics, but the mechanics are exactly the same, minus fear of respect.
Great. So how much did that impede your progress of?
No, I mean, I'll make my expansion on land. For the
So wait
time
a second.
being.
Oh my goodness, the Kraken has moved
Just
in on
parked
the
there.
exact spot that you wanted to create that.
There's
base.
there's land for everyone. There's lots of room to expand to my west, so I'll pick there for now until the aliens cool it a bit, and then
One of these days, Dave, we need to do a live stream where we do some killing.
that's what I was kind of planning to do.
Dave, and maybe
Diplomatic.
this is why I don't win very often. But Dave likes to play a very calculated, reserved game, particularly in the early game.
There's enough room for it.
Right.
We
Just have to
have
keep my
more
options
questions
open.
pouring in on Twitter. Leatherneck wants to know, there's obviously a focus or at least a large addition of naval units. Are we going to see any love for the air or paratrooper units in Rising Tide or the near future?
Well, like I said, I mentioned that aircraft got a pretty comprehensive rebalance to make them a little more powerful. The paratrooping is accomplished mostly through the orbital layer. There's the phasal transporter, and the orbital units, along with all the other units, were rebalanced in terms of their production and resource cost, where they unlock in the web. So phasal transporters are a little bit different than they used to be. But with the addition of water gameplay and the expansion of what the units can upgrade to, actually a lot of focus has gone into expanding the hover capabilities. There's a lot more units that hover, so a lot more armies that are sort of inherently amphibious, that you just like slide back and forth across land and sea. And that's really by design. We don't want you to sort of suffer if you've like spent a lot of effort to make a strong land army and then you just like walk up to the water's edge and you're stuck because your opponent has put all of their cities at sea.
Right.
There should be a lot more sort of free movement between the two. And so we've made sure that like no matter what situation you're in, sort of the road back to military power, if you're not quite matched for the landscape, isn't really that bad. So, but in terms of aircraft, per his question, aircraft are always kind of a curious animal in Beyond Earth because obviously you should unlock them pretty fast, since if you can fly through space, we can make a plane. They're not quite as sort of tech locked as they were in historic Civ, but they customize into sort of the style of aircraft you want. And there's a lot more emphasis in the game, sort of like the modern aircraft style of gameplay, which is like carrier groups, like taking a big block of air bases to where you need it, and then like pounding them really fast with aircraft.
Right.
So we've definitely done a lot to make that a much more viable strategy and make air striking and mobile air bases centered around carriers the way to play with them. So
I hope that answers your question. Sounds like it does. We have another question from Lofty Kerbazi asking, this just seems to be kind of general, what may the future hold with Civ, and as you answered before, pretty much anything. And probably a lot of that is based upon player feedback, I would assume, or just what the design team
I mean,
likes the idea.
It's a combination of those things.
Oh, wait a second. Is this hybridization?
This is the unit
affinity
upgrades. This is one
happening?
of the.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just.
Not quite yet. We can actually.
We can preview them, though.
Yeah, we can
Yes.
preview them.
So these are the straight ones, and then these are the hybrids.
Ooh.
So
Exciting.
they look really cool. This
They
is
do
the
look really
ranged
cool.
marine.
I agree with you.
So if we're playing a harmony build, it means we're either going to have this one or this one by the end of the game.
And that's supremacy and purity.
This one is harmony supremacy, and
Right.
this is harmony purity.
Okay. Cool.
So I'm
And
gonna
what
get
was
there.
that? What was the art direction like with that? Because it's very. I mean, when you're talking about things that are a little bit more clear cut, like being friendly with the nature or changing yourself to suit the environment, as vice versa with like supremacy and purity, I would assume the art direction would be a little bit more clear cut, makes sense. But with all these like hybrid elements and different motivators, how was that whole process? Did you guys did it take a lot of iteration to get to what you finally wanted in terms of the unit design and overall aesthetic to those? Or?
I think we had a pretty good direction right off the bat. One of our concept illustrators sort of set the tone for what they were going to be generally, the look of them. And then from then on, it was influenced mainly by gameplay. They're sort of the gameplay of the hybrids is more I don't know, it's more specialized because you have the utilitarian nature of the primary affinity units. And then all of the hybrid units do really interesting and weird things.
Well, yeah. So I think I mentioned earlier in the stream that the hybrid unique units were meant to offer the player tactical options that you never saw before in a Civ game. And that was partly because we didn't want to replace the function that the existing unique units and existing core units were serving. Like, how many different kinds of shock troops do you really need before they start to feel like the same? So we wanted them to feel like these are options to make your army more, like I said, more customized, more about a particular style of roleplay or certain kinds of tactical synergies that you really like. And others were like just give them opportunities to do things you couldn't ever do before. So many of them have sort of a supporting style role or an augmentation style role where they're designed to go along with a strong central army. And they let you do all kinds of cool things. Like there's the drone cage, which is you deploy it and does an area of effect heal, so every unit around it heals. The golem, which is deploys into this like mobile wall that blocks ranged attacks, so you can set them up as a moving siege line that cannot be shot over, protecting the army behind them as you advance on a city. There's the nano hive, which is an area of effect damage and stealthed. It's an invisible unit, so you like plunk these around, and they're mobile landmines, and anyone comes near it, they'll just start to get damaged, and they won't be able to detect the origin. And then a bunch of others that are just designed to be like sort of exceptional combinations of some of the stock abilities that have never been combined before, so that you can have really powerful units in specific situations. But like I said, because they're hybrids, they're not meant to be necessarily the front line or the core of your army, but to go along with a well-balanced army and make it especially strong in the right situation, so that if you play for that situation, your army is, unbeatable.
I'd say that's true for the uniques. The core classes, when you upgrade them, can still be the backbone of your army. So
Sure.
you can have an entirely hybrid army, and it's very effective because you're Marine, and you're ranged Marine, and the sort of the base classes of units, they all have hybrid upgrades at the highest tier. So
here's my submarine sunk down there. There he is.
nice.
It's one of our first naval units, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
I've had a few out, but this is the first sub. So I'm going to go hunt some aliens with it.
When might we see the first naval base in this game?
Well, if Dave can get out there,
Trying.
well, proving difficult.
There's playing to win, and there's playing to show your new content.
Right.
I mean, Duncan Hughes down here is driving his around. I could go spy on him.
Oh, that's true.
That's true.
Yeah,
You
we
can
could
get
just
some
live
spies,
vicariously
yeah.
and be like, hey, look at that cool thing.
It's always a balance of choices.
Right.
Making these choices, figuring out what's strategically important in the short term and long term, and when we see games like this where there are a lot of tough choices like that, we kind of smile and know that the systems are working well and everything's kind of clicking. So, but we'll get one. We'll get one here in a
Yeah, it
little
looks
bit.
like I'm not attracting the aliens' attention anymore. So why don't we just
Should,
jumpstart this?
You should. Can you buy one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go.
There we go.
So gets that. Oh, she wants to buy an agreement. Sounds good to me.
So, okay.
Oh, sorry. I'll go back in.
Yeah. So she'll get the benefits of that agreement. We will get additional diplomatic capital.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
the deal there.
So I
Is
have one
that, has
agreement.
that replaced favors, or is that...
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, you could. There's some obviously mechanical similarity. The idea of this
Right,
currency.
right.
But yeah, like capital is the monetary value, the moving current through all of diplomacy.
It sounds like an evolution.
Yeah. So I'm making 4 based on the agreement she's buying from me, and then I think an inherent yield from my cities. But I'm spending some to buy this agreement, the energy maintenance for my military, which actually I could probably drop.
So it's costing her diplomatic capital. It doesn't just come from nowhere, basically. Like,
Yeah.
she has to spend diplomatic capital in order for you
Yeah,
to...
it circulates.
Okay,
So the
great.
more diplomacy you do, the more capital you have to do diplomacy and so on. It's a self-fulfilling system. And then, like I said, if you want to manufacture more with wonders and things like that, there are certain buildings like the spy agency and others that will just give it to you. So I don't have that big of a military anymore, and I've got a pretty good energy income. So I'm going to drop this agreement, and I'll probably earn a disappointed snip from Arshia. This is an interesting point because I didn't really need that agreement anymore. I don't really have that big of an army. I'm making plenty of money. But it was the foundation of a relationship, like a good respect between me and Arshia was building as a result of having that going. So now that I've dropped it, she's upset. Not only is she not making as much diplomatic capital, but there's not necessarily a reason for us to be friends the same way anymore.
Right.
So it was a really interesting choice on several levels, one of which is, do I want to maintain the agreement for the hell of it just to build a foundation of a stronger friendship later on?
That's kind of the heart of the diplomatic choices, I think. That
Yeah, and so that actually is part of what makes Integer so powerful, is because they can maintain agreements so cheaply. They could just have them out there, even if they're not necessarily benefiting immediately. They can buy really cheap ones as sort of an overture of friendship, and in so doing, like, rebuild or reestablish respect with their neighbors much more quickly than another civ might. Oh, I'm supposed to go that one to sea with that
Oh.
one. Right. I'll get out there. Driving my sub around. I like subs.
One of the other things that is definitely worth mentioning is that there's a brand new soundtrack to the game, which we're hearing now. Jeff Knorr, Griffin Funk, and Grant Kirkhope worked on this soundtrack. Griffin Cohen, excuse me, worked on the soundtrack, and you'll get that when you get the game. You can also get it on Spotify and iTunes, which is awesome. All right, Dave.
Any more any of those Marvel landmarks?
It's somewhere, yeah. They're
I'm like half done with the quest. I cannot find another one.
All right, we have a question here from, and the past 30 seconds have been me trying to work out how to pronounce his name without totally butchering it. Palhaco Leto Inago asks, and this is a very specific question. The Pan-Asian Cooperative continues to have free wonder per city bonus, question mark? I know those have been rebalanced, so he's just trying to dig into the patch notes right here.
yeah. There was actually it's not even a patch note. I think that was an old build, and we did a live stream or something with it, and somebody saw a screenshot of this. I think it was their their base trait. Or something
Yeah,
like
it's their character trait.
Yeah.
Right. It's 1,000 hands. So I've got this thing.
Confirmed.
We can
Confirmed,
actually
yeah.
check. I don't think it's the same.
Okay, so
it's
it may have
not,
changed.
it's not a free.
Unconfirmed.
It's not a free per city. It's like 50% off for cities or something like that. I forget.
In any case, he'll know when the game comes out. for
Yeah,
sure.
right. And everything is also subject to balance. So
Right.
if it comes out one way and everyone's like, "Why isn't the other way?" Well, that's what we're here to do.
Exactly.
We'll make the game you want.
Whatever the state of it is right now has gotten through our QA department without becoming golden path. So, if they don't find an exploit in it, that doesn't say you guys won't. But it's usually a good indication.
So, all right, put this guy out
There
the
we
water.
go.
So how big of a problem are
Alright.
these colossal units for you? When they're, I mean, obviously they're just he's going around doing his own thing, but is that something that you're going to have to build to destroy at some point, just because it's kind of
Oh, another
No,
nest.
that's where it
Oh,
comes
that's a
from.
problem. Yeah. Yes and no. I mean, colossal units are a lot rarer. Part of the other rebalancing that we've done is with the aliens has made colossal units stick around or like relevant for the whole game. So their spawn rates are kind of a function of general alien life, but also they'll make sure that they won't vanish by the late game. So I will have to pay attention to them at some point. But if I'm playing for Harmony, that could be a good thing. Like
Right.
not only could I could have friendly relationship with the aliens, but I could be capable of leashing those colossal units. So I definitely want them to stick around if I'm at least halfway considering that tactic.
right. So no point to destroy them if you may convert them at some point.
Right.
Right.
All right, let's check in with some more questions. If you have questions for us, you're playing Civ. If you're just tuning in right now, it's very unlikely this specific instant. But if you are, we are playing Civilization Beyond Earth Rising Tide, the new expansion that is releasing in October, with a focus on... I'm going to stop what I'm saying. Here's the artifacts. It's finally happened. Yes, no, maybe?
Trying to just min-max the yields I get. This is pretty good. So here's an example. I cashed in a set, and so I got a permanent global bonus, which allows my cities to bombard through terrain obstacles, and
Cool.
on top of a pile of culture and science.
Is that something that you can see from the combination screen, or something you just kind of have to feel out once you...
It's sort of random. It's like depending on the categories that the categories of the artifacts that you cash in, indexes into a different loot table. So it's like it rolls a new reward based on the types
so
of.
it's not just going to be like wiki fodder where
right. I mean, there's certainly a finite number of them, so there, you could go on Wikipedia and see what the possibilities are, but there will be a little bit of randomness there.
So here's an interesting thing about that invisibility that now I have the opportunity to show. So my submarine is invisible, which its unit card will remind me.
It also has its flag there.
Right, but
little brackets.
we've added this like little bit of HUD that shows these eyeballs on my movement range, and that tells me where an enemy would spot them. So we've empowered players to have a lot more control over making sure their invisible units operate as ambushers by giving you a little bit of a clue on how to keep them out of sight. So I can move over here and like, oh, okay, there's something over there that would see him if I move there. So I can just stay just outside of range.
So can you
keep it
tell
safe.
what would be seeing you from that HUD element, or is it just kind of something?
Yeah, no, it's sort of a sonar style, like there's a blip
Okay.
over there, and like don't go too close or they'll blip you back kind of thing.
There's that alien brain down there.
There's a
Oh yeah.
there's an artifact or it's a floating structure. I can get the Marvel quest done. Or there's aliens everywhere. I might get it done.
We're gonna find out.
Saw a brain around here. That's the big one. Need to find the little ones.
So what are the main differences between this ice biome and the primordial biome in terms of gameplay, or is it just more of an aesthetic deal?
Well, it's definitely an aesthetic difference, but we have introduced some changes to alien behavior. Dave can speak to that, and then there are some There's a different Marvel quest per biome. So we're seeing 2 Marvel quests right now. One is the giant hydrocoral brain that you see in the water. That can
Right.
happen on any map with water in it. And then there's the ancient progenitor structure thing that is somewhere around here. I apologize to Orion, our quest designer, who is probably like cringing at my descriptions of these quests. He wrote them. They are much
It took me so
cooler than
long
I
to come up with words for that.
Why can't he
You've
remember the
butchered
name of them? Yeah, but each one of them is different. So you can, and they're always the same per biome. So you can sort of say, okay, well, if we play the primordial biome, I know that has the giant meteor crater, which gives me production when I complete the quest. So that can kind of color. If you're a pro player, that can color your strategy long term. Or multiplayer, that can color the strategy as well. But we didn't want to make them so different, the map's so different, that we would have to totally rebalance the game for each one, right? But yeah, so alien differences, alien behavioral differences, and Marvel quests are the ways they're different.
Excellent. We should point out that is your naval city on the
Oh,
move,
yeah.
correct?
My colonist is about to get to the spot that I want him at.
How quickly can cities float? Are they disturbingly fast and can
Yeah, they can
rain
be.
death down upon you?
It's a function of. It's interesting you should ask. The cities don't move by just cause they have to build it. It's a production-based thing.
Okay.
So it creates an interesting strategic trade-off where the city has to stop building other stuff like units or buildings in order to be able to drive around. It's very expensive. But its cost is based on how many buildings are in the city. So basically, the more stuff you have to move, the harder it is. So small cities can move pretty fast. Big cities can be very plodding. It can take 10, 15 turns to move a single, and they only move 1 tile at a time. So it's a really interesting. People talk a lot about the strategy of like when do you move, like how many things do you build before you move the first time, how many times do you move before you like sort of pick a spot that you're going to focus on because it's too expensive to move thereafter. And other players are like, no, I want to keep my cities small because I turn them into fortresses, drive them around and use their range strike. So there's lots of different ways to play it that are interesting, kind of find the balance point between the cost of the city move and the value to move it. So this guy is ready to go.
So you can make a city for offensive purposes as opposed to having it be a production facility.
Sure,
but
absolutely.
maybe having one translate into the other is not so easily accomplished. Sounds like.
Well, it's always easy to make the city more city-like, like just kind of like anchor it down and with buildings and put it in a spot that it's going to stay forever. Because it's good at being a city. But it's hard to go the other way. It's hard to power up its production to the point where it can start moving again quickly.
Right.
Once it's a really big city. At that point, you'd be better off just making,
Pro tips.
making another city.
Pro tips with David McDonough.
So I'm
Our
gonna
new series.
wait this guy out until that city's set up so I can power him.
Right, so Dave built a convoy, a trade unit there, and if you connect a trade unit to a city or an outpost, it'll grow faster. So he's trying to power up this new settlement fast
Before
because
the aliens get
aliens are everywhere.
One of the other interesting tactical sort of questions or I guess challenges of water cities is that they're inherently weaker than land cities. They don't have as much combat strength or as much defense out of the gate, and that's partially mechanical. Like it was partially a sort of a balance choice, but partially it's logical and a fiction choice because they're floating. They don't anchor. They're just much more vulnerable. They can sink. So water cities are nimble in the fact that they can literally move away from danger, and navies are a little bit more powerful, but that makes water cities much more fragile, especially in the early game when there's like big aliens around that can just like ace them if they really decided to. So establishing a strong aquatic civ out of the gate, especially with no land anchors, can be quite a challenge, but they can grow up to be extremely powerful because of how valuable the things are you can find at sea. So
So it's a large risk for a large reward.
Yeah, and so it makes playing an aquatic-based civ where it's your capital at sea, and that's the city that's fragile. If you lose your capital, you lose the game. It makes them a totally different kind of like strategic thinking process in the early game. How do you keep your capital safe? How do you move it around to get its territory without abandoning your expansion and all that?
It's got to make for some pretty interesting new choices, though, for sure, especially for our Scottish dad bod friend.
Yeah, right.
He's all about that.
I have this theory that David will slowly converge to Duncan Hughes over the course of his lifetime.
I have to get a lot heavier.
Right. Well, you're a dad now.
Got to start
so
cultivating mass.
You can get the dad bod.
Yeah, I'm halfway.
It's like a force multiplier on dad bod.
It totally is.
So, what are some of your new strategies that are enabled? What are some of your favorite new strategies that I guess are enabled by Rising Tide? We just talked about the YOLO, excuse my terminology, building your capital city on the water. Obviously, something that is extremely risky and new. What are some other, maybe less obvious things players can do to get some new experiences?
I really like to paint the city border. I think there's some really creative things you can do with that, particularly in on archipelago maps where there are a lot of choke points. In multiplayer, that can be really fun. So there's a lot of emergent strategy there. There's just we're always trying to really eliminate the golden path. We want each strategy in every game to be different. So you can use kind of higher level approaches, like I want to go for growth early so that I have foundations to do other things later. Like that strategy you can develop in the base game, continue to deploy in this, but really we want the player every game to be thinking strategically about the map and to make different choices depending on what they find. It's not like we don't want it to be like StarCraft where there's a build order.
Right.
Not to say that there isn't. I'm sure the first week we get this thing out there, people will find some golden path build order, but we're going to try to patch that away.
And that video will get
right?
mad views.
I'm sure. But the kind of the design goal, the ultimate goal here is to make every turn something you have to think about and not be rote or automatic.
Right. That's a very, I think, noble design decision to have it be more emergent and based upon the variables and reactionary as opposed to something that is just set in stone that you were executing the. And that kind of harkens back to some of my early, I guess, RTS experiences before I understood the ideals of an optimal build strategy in multiplayer, and I was just playing with my dad over a LAN. Like, that was the best.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I always loved about Civ games is that there may be an optimal build strategy, but it's far from being the only viable one. And there's so many ways to solve every problem that it almost doesn't matter what you do as long as you try.
Yep.
And that makes the game really, really rewarding to play, especially to play over and over again and try different things. So I'm gonna fight these guys. Next turn. But yeah, sort of like I played a lot of Civ kind of like on my own on my family computer or with my brother growing up, and we would love to we would make our own goals. We would say like I'm gonna get to the spaceship, or I'm gonna play the Aztecs and conquer the world. And that's the things I remember about Civ games, like playing the optimal build order. Well, is one form of success, but far from the only one, and maybe not really the one at the heart of the Civ experience.
And I think that the Civ player base is one that is open to those new, interesting challenges for themselves in terms of like a victory condition. Like, okay, well, maybe making a base on the water is too risky for if I'm trying to be super competitive, but I'm not. It's I'm trying to have fun. And opening yourself up to a new experience like that, I think, is fantastic. Combat.
Torpedoes.
Oh, those poor alien whales. Terrible,
Nice.
terrible things
see
happening
them
in this street.
Crying. Such awful sounds.
Especially since we're going to be Harmony. Ah!
More submarines. So, Ark, she's very realpolitik. So she's like, hey, you're killing things. I like it. So actually, this might be a good opportunity. I'm going to go check on her status with me.
Hola.
So I'm going to...
How can I help
Yeah,
you?
so she's been improving of a lot of stuff I'm doing, my production, my military unit strength. So this is a great sort of segue into like, all right, now we can start to make sort of some big moves in diplomacy. Like I've got the capital, there's lots of agreements, there's a lot of capital flying around. And I've been on the planet long enough. How long have we been here? 100 turns.
100 turns, yeah.
More than long enough to the point where I can sort of see the trends that people are going in. Like, and And one of the great things about Integer, like I said, is that you can be so flexible. Like I could afford to wait. I didn't have to make an early play because I can switch so easily. So, like Will mentioned, oftentimes we consider an optimal way to play is to be friends with 50% plus one of the other leaders in the game, because that's a good way to have a lot of allies, a lot of capital flowing, but not to like make more promises than you can keep. Because eventually people are going to start to schism, and they're going to force you to choose sides, and you'll have to disappoint somebody that you said at some point you were going to be friends with. So better not to have ever pretended to be their friend in the first place. So now I've watched Ark, and I see that she's a big fan of the stuff I'm naturally doing, like the stuff I already like to do. So it's a good natural ally. So I'm going to try to make a better relationship. So right now we're at neutral, and I've got a bunch of options above me that'll come along with sort of some permanent advantages. And these are very similar to in terms to the old diplomacy stuff, but they come along with like some different powers. Like they'll make all of our agreements better. They'll make some accessible that weren't before, and they'll eventually lead to things like open borders and like automatic war declarations, things that you would expect.
But it comes at a cost. We actually don't have the requisite fear or respect to go from neutral to cooperative, and it also costs a flat amount of diplomatic capital. So changing your relationship costs that resource.
Right.
In multiplayer, of course, the fear and respect requirements aren't there, but the capital resource requirement is. And the other thing to point out here is that Suzanne has actually sanctioned LOD.
Right.
So by allying ourselves with her, we are sort of tacitly nerfing our relationship or
Trending away from.
away from our relationship with LOD. So watching the little pips on that side to see how they feel about everybody else is also an important part of this.
Yeah, and her thresholds for fear and respect are kind of unique to her. Every leader's got their own personality, like the level of trust, like trustingness or suspicion maybe that they have. So Suzanne, like I said, she's very realpolitik. She's very mercenary. So it's got a lot of covert op stuff. So her thresholds to become friendly are higher. She just doesn't believe you right out of the gate. Whereas a dude like Barre or Kavitha are very trusting, so they're easy to be friends with. They're also easy to anger as a result. So like you have to play both the the particular alignment of what you're doing with who they are, and the sort of you have to know their character. So there is some strategy that goes game to game. Like if you get into a game with Suzanne, and you can know that she'll be suspicious. You can know that she'll prefer covert ops and military activity. And so you can play for or against that. You can have some foreknowledge. But she'll also be custom every game. Like, this game she might be all about commerce. Another game she might be all about production and wonders. Another game all about science.
Nice.
And so every time you got to sort of meet, you can know them a little bit ahead of time, but you also have to meet them again every time. So I'm going to wait and see if I can get more respect with her before I can.
So you think the play is not to decommit from being an ally with the person you've already kind of aligned yourself with, and wait to get some respect to then.
Yeah, I'm close enough. I'm only 1 point away, and
Okay.
there's no hurry with her because once I'm above that threshold, it'd be hard to lose. I might try to get Arshia on my side too. It might not be a good fit.
She may respect you enough.
I think she does, but actually I think
Hola.
Duncan might be the best choice. Yeah, because like another thing to notice, like I'm glancing at their fear respect score to me, which is right here, and so Arshia has a respect score of 5, but a fear of 2, which means that she's probably as powerful than me, if not more powerful. And one of the good things about fear and respect is that since you need either one to maintain a relationship, they can operate as sort of backup plans. Like if she respects me but doesn't fear me, then I'm pretty much living on my respect score. And if that drops too low, she'll kick me to the curb and I'll have lost all that investment. Whereas with Duncan, his respect is high, his fear is also reasonably high, so I'm probably stronger than he is. And we're also neighbors. So I would be better served investing in a relationship with him because I can probably depend on it a bit more. Like if I know that if I lose my respect value, I can probably bully him into staying where I want him.
So unlike your diplomatic currency, that fear and respect is not it's not a currency basically. So those are just what he thinks of you. So if you make this alliance with Duncan, you are not going to have no fear and respect to spend on.
No, right.
It's not
just,
zero
It's
sum.
just a reflection of what they think of you as opposed to it.
So I went ahead and did that.
Making alliances can affect that score, though. So if you made an alliance, so we just made an alliance with Duncan, who has
down
another alliance with Reginaldo. Reginaldo may like us a little more because we're now allied with his friend.
He's cooperating with
He's cooperating,
Duncan,
yeah.
right. Yeah, so that might be a leg up with Reginaldo, which I could go here or there about. More likely, that's just going to be probably someday they're going to be allies and get into a war, and they're going to need me to join them. So I can just watch that and probably just let Reginaldo break one way or the other, and see see how I feel about it later. But certainly Duncan is probably going to be a good investment as a friend in this world.
We have a specific question about water cities from Eric. Do water cities have tile limits to be close to each other? So I suppose how close can water cities be to one another?
Yeah, they have the same founding restrictions as a land city, so you can't found them right on top of each other. And they can't move so close that they can range strike each other. So that's, I think, 2 away. But as long as the water city isn't in their way, they can travel anywhere they want. Once you have the higher technology, they can travel over deep ocean as well as shallow. And they can get as close as they want to, or close as any other city to stations and so on.
Does that also ring true for land? So, for instance, I couldn't take my water city close enough to range strike a land city?
Yeah. Cities are always going to sort of like zone defense other cities.
Okay.
And that's something that was sort of not contentious, but like, what if we didn't do that?
Uh-huh.
And I would encourage like a modder out there to go in and change the distance.
You try
'cause
it.
It's actually really fun. It's almost good enough to make it an option, but it can get crazy.
Maybe
as
in a
you can
patch.
imagine.
Maybe in a patch. We'll see. We'll see what the future holds.
All right, Dave. So what's going on here?
Well, let's see, what is going on? It looks like my neighbor, Duncan, actually is starting to fight the aliens down here. And so is Reginaldo. So Reginaldo's right over here. He's getting pretty big. So I'm feeling a lot of pressure to expand. Like, there's this big chunk of valuable ocean. Look at all these resources.
Wow.
Between my 2 maybe friends. And if I don't expand now and I try to expand later, they're not going to be as friendly. So I could end up undermining the place in the world I'm trying to carve out for myself. So I made 1 city. I've got 3. I'm going to try to make 1 more, and then I'm going to try to power them up, make them really big, drive them around, claim a lot of land, and see if I can like do that before either of them start eyeing this territory greedily. And then we'll be sort of we're already 100 turns in, so then we should be set with 4 cities. That's a solid number to build a foundation for some sort of victory run. I can start picking my affinity. Like, I'm already 2 deep in harmony. 1 more and I can start leashing aliens, which will be a big deal.
Exciting.
And
we have half an hour to do it, but
yeah,
I feel
all right,
like
let's do it. Let's go straight for that.
That is a worthwhile goal.
I think, like I said earlier, there's so many ways to play this game, and this is a very metered approach. Like, we're going to build our foundations early. We're going to.
I'm also only halfway paying attention because I'm trying to answer
Oh,
questions.
absolutely right.
But
As is the case with most Let's Plays.
if you played with one of our QA guys or one of our Frankenstein guys, they would just kill you probably right away. So these games can get very contentious. This is we haven't seen a lot of fighting here, but it's certainly not necessarily the norm. I'm always interested to see how play in Civilization reflects personality. I think it really does. Like, David's a very calculating, calculating guy.
It also becomes warped if you develop the game because
Right.
it becomes a mixture of your personality and your certain knowledge of the bumps and dips.
and also,
in
if you're trying to
balance.
show off certain features, that
Sure.
Yeah,
that's
I'm
incentivized
gonna
as
rush
well.
the alien leash ability and rush submarines because they're cool, not necessarily because like they were optimal for the gameplay at that particular time.
It's interesting you say that it reflects your personality, because I've always taken almost a polar opposite to what my personality is in real life when I play these grand strategy games, and just try and be as much of a jerk as possible. I don't know. So maybe that says something about my subliminal
That still
agenda.
says something.
Yes.
Some wish fulfillment, maybe.
Right. Yeah, we've got to get out into that. I'm surprised someone else hasn't grabbed that spot out
Yeah,
there.
I'm
It's
gonna
very
go
lucrative.
leave my submarine out there
Yeah,
to
go
lurk.
park out there and make sure nobody gets there.
Go lurking.
Should try to
Oh,
leash an
Duncan's
alien
is-
too. We've got a bunch of explorers that
Yeah.
aren't doing much.
NSA is expanding over here. That's actually good. If he's going that way and not to the east, that's bodes well.
Another thing that you've got to really pay attention to in Beyond Earth base game, particularly in multiplayer, but also in this as well, is covert ops. So if you don't have your covert ops online and protecting you pretty early, like not turn 100 maybe, but you can get caught off guard by coup attempts and things like that can be pretty devastating. So it's a good idea to also build that covert infrastructure
So
when
that's
you have time.
very much still the case in the expansion.
Yes, there's been some balance changes. Like it's a little bit harder and takes a little bit more time to do the city flipping, to do coups. We had this game, this QA game, where I just got smoked by two of our young, QA interns because they just cooed the shit out of me. I put $1 in the cursing jar there, but they just. So I was like, I went back to my office with real man. I was like, all right, we're nerfing this.
Civ.
Just a little bit. I didn't nerf it, but it's still something you really have
The
to pay
rage from
attention to.
Civ.
Right.
Much like some board games can tear friendships apart.
Right.
Or make them stronger, but usually the former rather than the latter. So I wanted to ask, we talked about leashing aliens. We've been talking about it. This has been kind of something we've been trying to aspire to on this stream, is to be able to leash aliens. And that's obviously a really cool thing for the affinity, say it. The
Harmony?
The
Harmony
Affinity.
Affinity.
There
Thank
you
you. My mind. But the other two affinities, purity and supremacy, do they get anything super sweet like that?
Well, not like they have their own powers. They're just not as alien focused. Like Harmony's about the planet, and one of the big things actually we responded to was that players said, "Oh, they feel too similar." Like I feel like Harmony often feels like blue supremacy. Like I just get machines with a different color, and it doesn't feel like I'm really drawing strength from the world itself and really trying to play the planet. So that's part of why we sort of embedded more power to manipulate the aliens directly, but also why we specifically left some things to Harmony alone, where they are the only ones that get this.
So it was kind of a buff in terms of playability for Harmony.
Yeah, well, and like thematic, like suitability. That we want Harmony to feel like Harmony, where you actually need to care what's going on the world.
That's interesting. I wonder if now is like a unintended side effect of that. People will be like, Harmony's so fun, I get to leash aliens. I need to do things that are equally as cool with purity and supremacy.
Well, it's pretty early in the tech tree. So even if you're playing a supremacy or purity build, you can still get the
Go for it.
You can
just
still
for
get the tech and do
right.
it. Yeah.
Yep. With the hybrid builds now,
Right. Right.
which
we
is a very cool
We
feature.
should find an alien. I haven't even seen any. Here.
Well, the NSA guys have been really cutting them up.
Where's that Kraken going? Yeah, I thought one of the coolest things I guess about diplomacy is there's so many different factors, not just in terms of the AI making decisions, but in terms of you making decisions. So I noticed that your friend, when you killed some aliens, the friend who's like, hoorah! On the one hand, that's great because you can be friends and maybe there's some benefits there in terms of the military or power, but also it kind of goes against one of your other core focuses, which is Harmony and just being able to leash aliens. So, interesting. Very interesting dynamics. And that Kraken is nowhere to be found. He's gone.
Yeah, if we could leash one of those, awesome.
Yeah, that's probably some pretty... That's more heavier tech, right? To get into the tree, or is that...
I think it's actually a requirement of the particular... I think it's a Harmony affinity requirement, right? I don't think it's a tech.
No, yeah, you just have to
Yeah.
have level 3
Right.
Harmony to do it.
Right.
And you have to have alien life forms, which I already have.
We can leash the...
Alright, so I got the hydrocoral quest.
oh, there we go.
Great.
So now
Oh.
I can see everything, all the hydrocoral.
Oh, that's super cool.
I've tapped into their primitive
and
brain.
that was from the big hydrocoral brain that's specific to this ice biome.
Yeah.
Right, and
Yep.
it's not gray fog; it's white fog. So you can see, you can see units that are there. You can see cities that are there.
Cool.
It's as if you have your own unit sitting.
It's a great example of a benefit of playing this map, but not something that's too drastic to make you not want to
Exactly,
play this
yeah.
map in the future.
And it's an interesting strategic choice because if you don't want somebody to see what you're doing, you have to kill the hydrocoral, which makes the aliens mad, which can change your strategy.
Yeah, the Marvels were... The quests that go along with them were designed to be kind of like... A little bit like diplomacy in that they're meant to change the nature of the game in one specific but sort of all overarching way, so that every little thing you do, you sort of have to keep this in the back of your mind. You can definitely play to embrace it really heavily and make it a big deal in your strategy, but even if you try to ignore it, it's going to affect it at some point. Diplomacy is sort of the same way. If you completely ignore the diplomatic landscape and never deal with anyone, never upgrade your trades, you'll still pile up diplomatic capital from your headquarters and from other buildings, which you can spend to buy units. So you can still use the system, but you also got to be aware that behind the scenes other people are making deals and scheming and plotting, and that if you don't engage, you're sort of passing up a lot of power and a lot of ability to influence that world. So no matter what you do, diplomacy is going to matter.
Speaking of which, we have some capital banked We could improve a relationship. There's a Kraken.
Aha.
Finally.
An ice kraken. Yeah, they
Um,
look like. Yeah, let's do something.
This is
So
cool.
like you can see that I'm cooperating with Duncan Hughes, so all my agreements with him will be better.
It's
as a
kind of like
result.
the eBay of diplomatic favors.
Right.
Yeah. So actually, I'm going to pick the naval production one. Whoop.
That's a bug, guys.
It's all right. He's just doing a
He's
little
very
bit of
mad.
light stretching.
Very mad.
He heard us talking about his dad bod, and he's become self-conscious and has decided to take up a little bit of yoga and Pilates.
Right. His
Right.
T-pose is very angry. It's very, very
I
angry.
I really like that his default face is so disgruntled. Speaks volumes about what went into
Like
his
Who he really is.
aesthetic design. Yeah, that's
Right. So
great.
now my naval production will be a lot better, so I can start pumping out a naval force and taking out somebody.
Okay.
This
Stuck.
is a very
Got
active.
too many units.
Yeah, there's a lot of things over there.
We should get another. One way we could get a colonist too is to do so indirectly through culture. Our culture is kind of.
So Elodie wants to cooperate with me. This is interesting. Remember, because she was definitely not getting along with Suzanne, who I thought I was going to play to be friends with. So now I got a choice. I can throw in with Elodie. Why not?
Right.
It's free.
So they're both mutually exclusive, though, to a point.
They're,
probably.
well, at the moment, they don't seem to be happy with each other. So I could be eschewing my relationship with Suzanne. But Elodie's got a high fear for me. Remember what I said about the sort of the double
Yes,
insurance of
yes.
the two things? And since that doesn't cost me anything, I think I'll go ahead and accept and see what happens. If it might end up making Suzanne upset, which
We'll
could
see
be
on
really
our
bad,
little-
because if
our
she six
little-
or spies on me, that'd be really bad.
Little Twitter feed at the top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like diplomacy in real life. It seems like politicians are always tweeting at each other. So, you know,
Backbiting.
You really tried to reflect that.
life imitates
the
art
game.
and vice versa.
That's fantastic.
All right. Well, yeah. Before I forget, let me.
So if you're just tuning in, we have about 20 minutes left to go, and we are playing Civilization Beyond Earth, the Rising Tide expansion. And just to hit some elevator pitch bullet points, there is huge emphasis on some new aquatic gameplay, both with the cities being able to move, and then another big emphasis on a restructured and rebalanced diplomacy system. But what's not immediately apparent from looking at kind of a trailer is that there are a lot of things going on in terms of rebalancing all of the game systems to effectively, I guess, vibe with everything else that you guys have brought into the game in terms of changes and additions. And one of the coolest things that if I had a second with your advertising staff, I would say, hybrid affinities, they're so cool. Because aesthetically they're very interesting. I think gameplay-wise they're very interesting. And I think the whole point of you guys trying to drive home this, you play the game that you want to, and all of these benefits will kind of, you don't need to worry about them as much. You just do your thing, and your civilization will kind of evolve to meet that.
Yeah, maybe
standard.
if we do another stream with you guys, we'll start at turn 100 and get into that that area. The hybrid affinities are really cool, and you're right. It's kind of a feature that I think if you look at all of the features we've added to the game, probably changes the game the least. It's really cool, and it does put this unique spin on your army and makes the exploration through the tech tree much easier. But compared to diplomacy, for example, it's kind of, it takes second fiddle to that. But it's still a huge system. The art is so cool, and everything about it is just a huge win for us. We can. What other options? Can we look at the
Submarine upgrades.
Yeah, let's check out. Let's
Oh,
check
yeah.
out some. Even if we can't necessarily unlock them, can we just breeze through some art here and look at some of the
think
different
there's,
hybrid affinity?
I think we can't actually. Well, we can look at the upgrades, but now I got my leash ability.
Ah, okay.
So why don't we
Alright.
fire
Well, that
that
takes
up?
precedence over.
Yeah, I got
Anything
to level
else.
3. My
Alright, what are we
submarines
gonna
got
leash
more
first?
sub-looking. They
Oh yeah,
upgraded.
they're a little bigger.
Slowly shooting that to bits.
They can really soak. They can take a lot of damage.
Right.
Those hydrocoral.
Well, they can't. I mean, they can't really fight back.
No. Well, they can if you get too close. If it's a melee unit attacking them, then they'll throw some spores on you or some alien
Are
goop or
there
whatever.
melee aquatic units? I guess
Yeah.
the Kraken. And
There's
that
a
nature.
there's a melee naval unit that you can get, sort of analogous to the soldier, the marine, and there's naval aliens that are also melee naval.
I love how you have the whole tech web down pat, as I hope you would,
Yeah.
being the co-lead designers of the game. But
Yeah, sorry if we're going too fast.
oh no,
no, no.
please,
we can
no,
take a
this
look
is
at it, but-
adequate speed.
Yeah,
This is very good.
we have played this game a few times.
Oh, once or twice.
Wonder.
Aha!
Cool.
Built a gene vault.
The
Nice.
unicorn.
So all new cities get a worker, but mostly I get more capital. So all right, let's try and leash. There we go. So that's, I mean, it happened pretty fast. I'm sorry, but
The in this build the effect isn't there, but
so yeah, the explorer takes a little damage for doing it. How much you won't know ahead of time. So if the explorer is already wounded, it's a little risky. Could kill the explorer to do it. You always succeed. There's no like chance to fail. But I took over this this like pod.
It's yours
pod dude.
permanently, or is it
Yeah,
yours
mine
for
forever.
returns?
Forever.
Wow. Exciting. Amass an army of aliens will definitely be my personal victory condition.
you can have a whole menagerie of them.
Right.
Beastmaster.
The Beastmaster build for Civilization Beyond Earth Rising Tide. I can see it now.
You remember the second one where they go to L.A.
There's a second Beastmaster?
There's a second Beastmaster, and
That's
he goes
terrifying.
to L.A. It seems
What?
like every sequel in the '80s like took the base movie and put it in L.A.
A medieval time.
I've always wanted to do a crossover of Civilization with Blood Dragon. Civilization Blood Dragon.
Well, you heard it here first,
You're-
I guess.
I mean, if somebody out there wants to make that happen,
Please,
I'm up for
be
it.
my guest. I just remember those guys that I saw Beastmaster maybe 3 times when I was like 5 years old. But I remember those guys who like will hug people into their robes and then they reveal them and it's nothing but bones.
Right. I remember
That
that.
would disturb me to no end when I was that young. Good stuff.
All right.
So in terms of our strategy 100 turns down the line with that leash ability, let's say we wanted that to be a very active part of our military. Is that a viable option? Like, are these units actually going to pose a threat? Or by the time we get there, do you feel as though they'll be not necessarily that threatening
Oh,
to people
yeah.
who have...
So I leashed this guy, pushed my luck, and the explorer died.
I mean,
But I got 2
two
pod
aliens,
hunters
so
out
who
of it.
cares?
the limiting reactant for leashing is how many explorers you have. And what's cool about it is it gives explorers something to do late game. So basically, when the game was, you get to turn 150 in a standard game, explorers have combed the whole map, gotten all the goodies, explored all the ruins. They're basically, useless at that point. But now that you can leash aliens, they have a use throughout the entire game.
Interesting. Okay.
But they take damage every time you do this, and as Dave said, you don't know how much. So it's basically you can heal if you want, but that slows you down from leashing a whole bunch of aliens at
Would
once.
you take more damage, say, from leashing a kraken than you would, or is it just kind of a
It really
a
is
flat value?
It really is just like within a range
Okay,
to
right.
try basically to get close enough to throw the mind net or whatever it is.
But you
Mind.
always get the alien. You never don't
Right.
succeed.
Uh-huh.
You just may die trying.
I like that. I like that a lot because I think that if you spend your whole game kind of working up to this cool, I don't know, fantasy of being able to leash an alien, and then it fails, that doesn't feel very good.
Right, that doesn't feel good.
But now we have alien whales with
Yeah.
sharp razors on their
Good one.
face, so I'm a happy camper.
The art for the aquatic aliens is just awesome. The artist had a really good time.
First thing I'm doing when I get back to my desk is looking up a picture of that amphibious Colossus
Makara?
unit. Yeah.
I'm surprised we haven't seen more of those. I guess they were wiped out. They got killed.
There's been a lot of anti-alien activity in this game, which actually makes my decision to pursue aliens maybe not such a good idea. It definitely makes expansion easier, but there's so many people
Reginaldo
trying to shoot
dying.
them. Reginaldo and Duncan are both out to kill the
God,
aliens.
It's like
Yeah.
it's like a sequel to Free Willy in the future. Or something terrible.
It's hard to be an aquatic civ and be friends with the aliens. There's so many of them. They're so
Yeah.
fast. You really, I mean, that's a finesse game if you're gonna do it.
Especially the hydrocoral. Nobody cares about those. Even
Right.
Well, the aliens will get mad at you for killing even the hydrocore.
Oh, okay.
So,
So, somebody does
they
care
will.
about the
They will
hydrocoral.
care. Yeah, they will care. But I think they're quick to anger, but they will also fall off more quickly this time in this expansion. So you can rile them up and then just kind of hunker down and wait.
And they won't really remember you too well.
Right.
Great.
This guy's just out hunting aliens now.
So Dave, the next step here then for you would be we're going to expand.
Yeah.
We would build another colonist.
Yes, which is probably less design tracked. I
We
wouldn't do it
can't
here.
buy it.
Well, I just noticed that my health is in the
Oh man.
tank.
Oh,
so
wow.
I
We have
really
been
not paying
neglecting
attention.
our health. That's why our cities aren't growing. I wonder why.
That is very low.
Yeah, but so yeah, I definitely have to fix that. But yeah, I would follow through with that probably. I'd probably back off the leashing and alien stuff a little bit because there's so few of them. But well, I see a few. And oh, there's a worm.
Uh-oh.
See if we can get that out.
You can leash that as well, right? With the proper.
You can if you
Affinity.
have the requisite
Right.
harmony affinity. You can.
Yeah, I think it's over here. Alien domestication. Leash can be used in colossal units. Requires level
Great.
9.
What's the
Right.
third?
Hmm?
What's the third pip in that?
Oh,
Oh, okay.
makes your wells better.
Great.
Yeah.
So you get the Xeno cavalry unit, and you can domesticate big ones.
Very cool.
So yeah, at this point, the game's kind of. It still hasn't taken on a real shape of like what I need to do. I could do a lot of different things, or anyone could playing this. So I'm friends with Elodie and Duncan, who are my immediate neighbors, which is good. Probably could be friends with Reginaldo if I want. So I could be in a really, really safe spot. I could play a very peaceful game. Just build my cities, build them tall. Start establishing a real powerhouse of science and production. Get my victories going. I've got some investment in Harmony, so I could be in a really good position to do the Transcendence or the Contact victory. I've also got plenty of money. Or I could like roll these guys into some like grand alliance and just take out the rest of the planet,
Mm-hmm.
which would be fun as well. Since
That would also be fun.
like
You don't have some kind of crazy advanced save file, do you?
and I wish we could
brought one,
like
yeah.
fast forward this game 100 turns.
This is about the time, as Dave said, where we would sort of line up a victory run. The turn in the game, maybe turn 150, 120, something like that, is where we're going to start thinking about what victory we're going to go for. Dave, what victory do you think you would shoot for in this game?
Well, I think I'd probably go for Transcendence. The investment I've got in Harmony is pretty good, and I definitely want to keep going there. And just given sort of like the size of the planet and the fact that all my neighbors are turning into my allies, it would be a lot of extra effort just for the hell of conquest to get that going. But I would also keep my options open for Contact. I haven't really tried to find any part of the signal yet, so I'd really have to start, I guess. But the it just seems like a clear path down to Transcendence from this point. So, but anyway, like you can see, I've explored most of the planet. You can really see where everyone is. There's a lot of space, so there's a lot of expansion that could still happen, and there could be like tons of aliens, lurking in here or something like that. So I could find myself in a really interesting position where I can go leash a bunch of aliens and start a war somewhere on the other side of the planet with the proxy army, not having to build any of it myself, and then maintain my relationships with these three dudes with my sort of speedier diplomatic capital, and keep myself insulated from backlash from that. So it could go lots of different ways.
Yeah. I really am into all the different variables that you take into consideration to consider
Well, that's
a
part
victory
of
scenario.
that's part of what makes diplomacy such an effective new mechanic for the game, is that the fact that you have so much power there and then it can be wielded in so many different ways really means I could think about these options, and not just in not just for my own edification, but they could really manifest in the game. I could really actually do all of the things I just said.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we have about 10 minutes left. This is your last chance to tweet at us at IGN with the hashtag IGNPlaysLive. Any questions you may have for David or Will regarding Civilization Beyond Earth, Rising Tide, the new expansion coming out in October. Yeah, and let us know what you think of these new awesome leashing alien abilities, as well as, honestly, the biggest hit on Twitter so far has been the hybrid affinities. People really like the aesthetic of finding their own identity and having an aesthetic that reflects that.
Yeah, it's just a shame we can't roll one of these out. Maybe we can take a look at some of them. At
Yeah.
least.
Here we go.
There we go.
They got this bar that
That's
like,
okay.
you
Just
can't have
imagine
this
it's
yet.
not there.
But yeah, they look beautiful. They're really fun to play with. The core upgrades are more they're in the range of the straight affinity upgrades, in the sense of like the unit can become really good at one of several things, fit some sort of role in your army. It's really the uniques that I wish we could show you, but I'd have to cheat at this point to speed that up, which I can't.
Ooh. Oh.
I could not do.
I got so excited for half of a second. Oh, there's a Kraken.
Yeah, can't upgrade him or leash him yet.
Not yet. Unless you cheated. It's still an option.
I don't know if Jess installed the tuner or not. I don't think she did, but at any rate, yeah, it's it's a cool feature, and like you said, it really lets the player roleplay more effectively, and make, even if they're not roleplaying, make strategic choices without having to worry about their affinity distribution. And in a lot of cases in the base game, you'd be like, man, I want that tech, but I don't want that affinity because I'm shooting for this. And now you really don't have to care so much. You just get the techs you need, take the affinity points you want, and make a build that's some blend. So it works very well.
Are you treading on Duncan's turf over there, almost?
Reginaldo.
You should start a
Orange.
war. We got
Yeah,
10
we
minutes.
got
Just
two-
start
we have 8
fighting,
minutes. You
man.
could,
Take that submarine over there.
8 minutes to live the life
See,
you always
just-
wanted to.
Just see what happens.
Sure,
Or the life we always wanted you to,
Right.
vicariously.
Oh, like it's under control. Maybe we'll limp slowly over there.
So if you hypothetically wanted to start a war, and you should, from
We-
the
we can do
diplomatic
it in-
tree,
yeah,
how
we can
there-
do it in diplomacy
right
if you
there.
want.
Yeah, I'll start a war with Reginaldo because he gets really mad. Because he's well, actually, sometimes he gets like gleeful because he's a military civ.
Bienvenido.
Change relationship to war.
that was abrupt.
It's like, oh, he did the sad shake, the dad shake.
The dad, yes,
move.
disappointed
How could
dad.
you do this?
Oh,
It's
no.
probably- he feels
Oh, no.
backstab, maybe.
Yeah, I'm sure he does. All right, where are your units? Let me shoot them.
How do you stack up to Reginaldo's forces in terms of?
I have no idea.
I don't know. We're kind of behind the power curve a little bit in our military. We have
Got these
only
pot hunters,
3 levels in an affinity.
I'll
We're
stick
already
my
at-
alien worms
Got
on
these
you.
space whales, though.
we do have space whales. That's true.
Leech that little raptor bug for
Nice.
the hell of it.
Ooh, those look mean.
I think there was one down. Yeah, right. Slide out of spotted range and then shoot.
Nice.
Is there some awesome action that just took place that I missed? Did you destroy Reginaldo's?
Dave is shooting with his submarine.
Mhm.
Ooh, you came out on top.
Yeah, I mean, my submarine's way stronger than those patrol boats, but it's the only Brazilian unit I've been able to find, actually. I don't know where the rest of them are.
I wonder if he's at war with somewhere else.
Fighting the aliens, maybe?
Yeah.
So talk me through. Let's say I was playing Duncan or something, and I started a city on the water. I was successful. I did not get eliminated in the first 10 minutes of the game or the first 50 turns or what have you. And then I kind of wanted to take my conquest onto land. What are, in terms of amphibious units, and in terms of units, I guess it would be like kind of an aerial thing?
Well, I think the best, aerial combat is definitely good, particularly if they have coastal cities. But I think the most effective way to prosecute a war on land is to have a city on land. Of course, water cities can build land units, but they do so more slowly. You have to move them to land, and they're very vulnerable when they're in the water. So it would probably be a good idea to carve a little niche, build an outpost,
expansion.
and start to pump production.
Makes a lot of sense.
I don't know where he is.
I don't know. I can't find any.
He's crafty. So that's
away.
affected.
He did. He ran away.
Coward.
That's affected your relationship with Duncan as well, as we can see by that little. So that's with that. Or has it? I suppose.
It might have, yeah. But again, like all of these,
No, not yet.
it would take a little bit of. It would take a few transgressions to kind of knock your relationship down.
Okay, so just because you kind of
Right.
stomp over the ideals of one of your allies' ideals.
Oh,
right.
He came out to fight my pot hunters,
Oh, there we go.
so that,
boy,
they're not very strong.
Oh man.
our space whales are no more.
My Ripper was destroyed by the cutter. Yeah.
That hasn't gone well.
Oh, this is not going well for us.
It's kind of ironic that both the guy you went to war with and the aliens that you kind of tried
were
so
s-
hard to
We were so peaceful with
befriend.
them, and now in our time of need,
they destroy us.
that's too bad.
That's he's back in there. He's hiding. Gotta wait for him.
That jerk.
Set my sub up. The one of the other like new changes to diplomacy is this like war score status thing.
Bienvenido.
So we're at war, so it pretty much tracks the progress of the war based on how much suffering we inflict. So he's already killed a little bit, a couple units of mine, those Rippers. So he's winning very, very slightly. You got to win by a lot before you can start to extort spoils from them. But at any point, we can come back in and look at the
With the
war
white
score,
piece.
and this is your sort of indication of like what would be given up if if peace were made.
Right.
So it automates a little bit what used to be kind of handled individually, so that you can, if you have a massive military advantage, or if you've done just massive damage to them, like it can reflect any number of sophisticated situations, like, oh, I never actually attacked, but I defended so well, I just killed waves and waves of his incoming troops. How does that reflected? Well, the war status reflects it. Like it shows, like, this is how much force depletion you've inflicted on him. So your war score is leading by this much. And so from that you can extort, you can force them into peace, and you can force them into concessions at peace.
We have a final question from Jamal Mosley, who asks, are there plans to extend the roles of that colonies play in the future? I really miss city-states, but I'm loving the new diplomacy.
Yeah, the city-state system we took out, and the stations are sort of the, not replacement, but it sits in that same space. And they're functionally basically the same in the expansion. There's more we could do with them, certainly, but there's sort of things you trade with, things that make you better, things on the map that are interesting.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I hope that answered your question. We have to wrap things up, unfortunately. But
That's
this
okay.
is as far we made it. We leashed the space whales, so I say mission accomplished.
Yep. And then we threw them like living meat shields onto our enemies' cutters where they were cut apart.
Like any good Harmony Affinity does.
Maybe I did a little damage.
David McDonough, Will Miller, co-lead designers on Civilization Beyond Earth, Rising Tide, the new expansion coming out in October. What is the official release date?
October 9th.
Right, October 9th. You can get your hands on this and check out all the sweet new aquatic gameplay, as well as biomes and diplomacy and all other good stuff. For all things Civilization, keep it right here on IGN. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is James Duggan. Welcome to IGN Plays Live. I am here with David McDonough and Will Miller, the co-lead designers of Civilization Beyond Earth Rising Tide, the new expansion that is going to grace the game in a couple of months. Is that correct?
That's right, October 9th.
Mhm.
Ooh, you have a date. Very exciting. All right, so what are the big elevator pitch headline bullet points for the expansion?
Well, James, I think typically Civilization expansions have covered one distinct part of the game, the entirely new experience Beyond Earth with Rising Tide. So this game adds a ton of gameplay across the entire spectrum of the game, starting with the ability to land on and colonize the oceans. So aquatic gameplay is huge. A new diplomacy system, brand new to Civ, way to interact with leaders like you've never been able to before. Hybrid units, a new artifact system, expanded quests, 2 new biomes, new aliens. The expansion has got a ton of new
So
content.
changes, revisions, and additions to the entirety of the early, mid, and late game. So this is a very interactive experience, IGN Plays Live. You can tweet at us at IGN with a hashtag IGN Plays Live with your questions for David and Will, and we will answer them. We're going to jump into a little bit of gameplay.